All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar with Stratodesk and Island. We are really grateful to have some brilliant experts with us today. We have Rich Severson, VP of Solutions Engineering, and we have at Stratodesk, and then we have Jason, VP and Field VTO at Island with us today. A few quick items before we get started. We are recording today's presentation. We'll make the recording available to you afterwards. And then please feel free to enter your questions in the Q&A or the chat. We will have time for Q&A at the end, but feel free to put those in throughout. And I think we're ready to go. Go ahead, Rich.
All right. Well, good morning, and Jason, welcome, and appreciate the opportunity to talk and share this with everybody. I mean, this, at Stratodesk, we're pretty excited about the partnership, the technology alliance partnership with Island, and what we're seeing, and kind of how the industry is changing a little bit and adapting. As more and more organizations switch to the DaaS, SaaS kinds of things. The enterprise browser seems to be a direction that everybody's going, and obviously Gartner shows those kinds of things. So, so why is it that Stratodesk and Island are working together? If you take a look at what we do as technology, different technologies, you put the two technologies together, it's absolutely an amazing solution. So it's important to help people adjust to how the work is changing, I guess, if you will, right? For policies and compliance, and to be able to deal with all the risks that come with browser-enabled um, application and access, right? So first, a little bit about what we do at Stratodesk, right? At Stratodesk, obviously we develop a high-performance secure Linux operating system that we allow users and customers to be able to access those different digital workspaces, whether those be VDI or SaaS and DaaS, the way that the enterprise browser market is moving. So those are the kinds of things that we're trying to help, right? So and we do those, with what we have is No Touch OS, right? No Touch OS is the operating system that goes on the endpoint. It's a read-only, high-performance read-only Linux operating system we put on basically any x86, x64 hardware, including Raspberry Pis, by the way. So it gives you the ability to put that operating system on virtually any hardware, and then to be able to have access to remote applications, whatever those types of applications are, and include things like the Island Enterprise Browser, and again, we'll go more into why that's so important and what that's going to do for us, right? And then, of course, the ability to deploy those devices and manage those devices with, from an enterprise perspective with something like No Touch Center. I kind of think that's really the magic sauce, from the Stratodesk solution, is to be able to put those devices out there and then configure those policies for the endpoint devices for the operating system from an enterprise perspective. And again, this goes back to the importance of the Island thing. And Jason, those are the things that Jason's going to show us in just a little bit, how you can manage, the browser access from an enterprise perspective. So, the challenges that customers are dealing with today, right? Obviously there's the ransomware issues, there's the policy issues, there's the compliance things. It's all those things that everybody's already aware of, right? So, I was at a seminar a couple weeks ago, right? And they asked, what is the number one, concern for CTOs and CIOs? And everybody brought up, ransomware and those kinds of things. And they said, no, in reality, the number one, concern for CIOs and CTOs is don't let me be the news, right? So how do we manage those kinds of things? And then of course, we have the whole Windows 10 to Windows 11 migration, and what hardware is going to be supported and what hardware is not going to be supported. And then, the refresh for those, and the expense of, getting new hardware to be compliant, and then how do you push that out, right? So there's multiple costs in doing those kinds of things. So, there's other answers, I guess, if you will. I often tell people, why are you using Windows to get to Windows, right? Um, so anyway, so those kinds of things. And certainly the benefits from the Stratodesk perspective, right, is, again, the security of having a high performance secure endpoint to know and have the comfortability knowing that the attack vectors are being addressed from an operating system perspective. Again, the hardware agnostic aspect of it, you don't need to go out and get brand new hardware to be able to run the latest operating system just because somebody tells you. To have an operating system, you can put on existing devices and be able to put on new devices and be able to extend the life of that hardware and continue going forward. So, and the up-to-date aspect, knowing the fact that we take care of the updates for you, right? Again, think of it as a single file system where when the updates come out, whether they be CVEs or whether they be application updates, we take care of that for you. You simply get the latest versions of the No Touch OS and put that operating system out to those devices as your schedule requires, and knowing that you have those. So it's always up to date, those kinds of things. The other thing too that we find interesting, and one of the things that we do in this space different than some of the others, is the fact that we have flexible licensing capabilities. We still allow perpetual licensing. That's something that some of our competitors don't. So having the ability to have, the cloud offerings, have perpetual license, subscription, different options, and competitive upgrades, those kinds of things that we offer and allow. So. And then, of course, again, no touch center to me is the key. And the fact that you can have no touch center on-prem, you can put it in your cloud. We can host it in our cloud for you. It's up to you. I mean, those are the things that allowing the flexibility of the solution. Um, so, so now going into the benefits, and we're getting ready here, and I'll have Jason do his presentation here in just a moment. But, the thing here is understanding what are the benefits, what are the key benefits, the ability with No Touch OS. I think, from my perspective, having the ability to put something like No Touch OS on your hardware, you can now manage and know exactly what's occurring with the operating system. You can know that it's up to date. No Touch also provides the ability to manage the BIOS, so you can make sure that BIOS issues are being taken care of. You can make sure that the OS things are being taken care of. And now you give the users access to the ability to access, the SaaS, DaaS, even VDI applications via browser, and then having the level of control that Island introduces into the browser from the enterprise browser perspective. I think it's an unmatched security solution. I don't know that you're going to be able to come up with a better endpoint solution from an enterprise management perspective, giving your users the ability to access what they need to do to get their jobs done, and be able to have the visibility and the comfort of knowing everything's being taken care of, and having two seamless solutions. And that's the importance, I guess, if you will, of the two of us, the two organizations, having such a technology alliance that we work together. So you think about it, right? You have simple endpoint management from the No Touch OS perspective and from the Island perspective. You give the users the great experience where they know that they can get to their desktops, they can do their unified communications, they have the ability to do what they need to be able to do, and at the same time, be able to mitigate all those different risks from the malwares and the keyloggers and all those kinds of things, be able to mitigate that easily across a wide enterprise. So I think, from that perspective, the two solutions together is an absolutely amazing solution for customers. And so, Jason, if you want to show yours here, give me just a second, and I'll figure out how to stop sharing mine. End slideshow. I don't want to end slideshow. Wrong screen. I'm going to go ahead and go stop sharing. You should be able to get it, Jason, hopefully.
All right. I sent a request. We'll see how we do here.
Where did it go?
All right. You're probably going to have to stop sharing.
Yeah, it's not letting me do that. There, share. Come on.
We good?
Well, I thought so, but it's saying no.
Okay. It looks like mine is coming through, so I think we'll keep going and just see if you can hit the stop share on your side. But Rich, I'm super excited to be here. This is a partnership that is a true game changer. The Stratodesk plus Island solution. Like you said, I can't think of a more secure, better user experience. For a read-only operating system, fully governed, fully managed, to boot into a full enterprise-grade browser. So the real challenge is, if I were to ask the question, well, why haven't you just run your business on a fully managed thin Linux read-only operating system before? The answer would be, well, I may not have the networking. I may still need access to thick applications. I may, I don't trust the browser. I don't trust the consumer-grade browser that we have. And that's true. That's because it's not built for the enterprise. It's built for consumers. So the whole notion of all of the challenges that we had with our Citrix environment, with our VMware Broadcom, Horizon, Omnissa, AWS Workspaces, all of that. This is the solution to get into those environments. If you're not using this in your carpeted spaces, or even in some BYO use cases, call centers, BPO. Type use cases, then I don't know what you're doing. It doesn't make any sense to have another 65 gig operating system log into Citrix to get to another 65 gig operating system. Now, that being said, when we start thinking about data leakage and data privacy and some of the issues there, if we were able to put this into a fully managed workspace that happened to be a browser, and by the way, for the technologist out there, how would you do it? How would you build the next generation end user compute environment? Would you write it in Visual Basic or Delphi or some sort of existing thick client technology, or would you write it where all the developers are writing their code, which is Chromium? So all the big players, everybody's moving to the web. For those that aren't, that still have thick apps like Microsoft, right? We think Teams, we think Outlook, we think Word and some of the others. Those are all now written in Chromium, right? But they're compiled to Electron and then sent to an executable to run through Citrix or whatever. But they still are these beautiful Chromium progressive web apps that you can launch right from the browser. And I'll show you an example when we get into the demo. So we think about the browser today. What is it? Well, it's Chrome, it's Edge. You might use Firefox, probably deep within inside your VDI session. And that's just the way it is. We started with VDI, 25 years ago or something. I think I was playing with Citrix WinFrame back in the late 90s. And it was cool. It was cool to put a DOS app over the internet, right? Or a Win32 app. Today, the most popular application to put through Citrix or VMware is Chrome. And that's a shame because you're just browsing the web. But we don't trust what's coming through the web, right? We don't trust that you're not downloading malware onto a company device or even into the network. We don't maybe trust what category you're going to. We don't need certain categories to be browsed. And so what we end up doing is we start surrounding the browser, whether this is inside of the VDI instance at the operating system level or whether it's at the network level where we try to concentrate all the traffic. Those are kind of on the outside looking in at this point. When 95% of your apps, 95% of your day really is spent inside of the browser, how much sense does it make to try to wait for things to fall out of the browser to do something about it? And data loss prevention is a good example. Today, that's all we have. We can only be outside the browser, right? We're not watching things as they come, in and out of the browser. What we can do though, is we just wait for it to fall out. And if it hits the operating system, we'll scan it. Or if we can break and inspect the network traffic, we might do that. And just a note on that, all of these ZTNA vendors and SSE and, CASBs and, some of the DLP vendors that are out there today, they've made a good market share convincing customers to do break and inspect. And if you're not familiar with that, that's a term that means opening up the SSL, the TLS, looking inside of, the HTTPS traffic and trying to understand what's going on. It's like trying to diagnose an engine of a running car with the hood shut, right? But this is not going to last forever. We have TLS 1.3, we have perfect forward secrecy, we got other things like the QUIC protocol, maybe quantum if it ever happens. The browser has this unique position in the whole ecosystem to be the place where HTTPS is decrypted. And Chrome and Edge are responsible for that today. But then the data gets exposed, right? We think about it, we moved all of our data to this cloud, and that's where it sits. We hope it's secure up there. We hope they keep it safe. But when it comes time to access the data, it actually gets decrypted and it becomes insecure first in the browser. And from there, it goes anywhere it wants, right? Extensions can reach in and grab it even before it leaves, right? Extensions are great, but even something like Grammarly reaches in, grabs your data, sends it back to their servers. So the point is that we need more control of the data, period, right? So even if you get through this presentation and you take away, hey, we need a better browser, great. I hope you do take that away because today you don't get support for Chrome and Edge, right? If Chrome releases a new version and it breaks 20 of your key applications, what do? Do you call Google and get help? Probably not. Do you call Microsoft, get help on Edge? No. What you do is you call your 20 application vendors and say, hey, why doesn't this work in Chrome anymore? And so, with Island, we actually have more developers on Island than Google has on Chrome. We have more than Microsoft has on Edge. We're kind of becoming a big company at this point. But what that also means is that you get support for your most critical application in the enterprise. And the browser really has become that. And, as you spend, whether you're in cloud consoles, whether you're an administrator in cloud consoles, all that stuff is going through the web, going through the browser. So with Island, you get some very unique controls. And we think about the ways we've done this in the past, right? Virtual desktops. You guys probably are all Citrix administrators or, whatever it might be. This technology is definitely going away. There's no question. It just doesn't make sense anymore. Folks are getting upset with Citrix for business reasons. And you have this beautiful MacBook Pro with a Retina display, and then you get logged in after 45 seconds and two-factoring and all this to get to another desktop, with lower resolution and it's slow and all of that just to surf the web. Doesn't make a lot of sense. It's probably the most expensive way to get on the internet. But we're still hanging on to it. We're hanging on to VDI because, well, it represented this secure space. It represented a place where I got access to my corporate network and I can't download files from it. Okay, well, that's good. But I can still take a screenshot all day long of that sensitive data. I can still look at it. I still see it. It still comes to my eyeballs, right? The browser renders it, Citrix delivers it. I can see the data. So now we're giving you control over that presentation layer that you've never had before in a secured environment where you may not need a Citrix client. You may not need Citrix. That's a lot of servers. That's a lot of infrastructure in the back end. So what we've done, obviously, we've built something on Chromium, which is Island. And we took the Chromium project and we took out all the calls to Google, calls to Microsoft. We hardened it, made it secure, and then we added enterprise-grade features to it. And these enterprise-grade features include, linking it to your identity provider. So, even if you turn on Stratodesk and boom, you're in the operating system. And as you guys know, you usually don't log into it. It's just fully managed. It's up. It's ready. You turn on the computer, Stratodesk is up. And from there, it can launch you directly into Island. And today, if you're a customer, you know that it probably launches you directly into Citrix Workspace Client or the Horizon Client or others. But just that same way, you're going to get into a browser, ultra fast, get authenticated through your IDP, and that browser is your workspace. We can even run it full screen where you see, just the icons you need, just the entitlements you have in a secure, safe way. And of course, all the same controls plus even more that you've never seen before in VDI apply. So you're going to be able to cut, copy, paste boundaries around applications, not just block it. We don't want to block it. That's a horrible experience. We want to create boundaries around it. Give us the last mile control. Give me a way to audit 100% of all users with what they do. I don't want to buy another tool, Observe IT or one of these. I don't want to buy something else, another agent to put inside the VDI, And as far as networking is concerned, we have the networking built into the browser, so we can get rid of VPNs, get rid of SSE and ZTNA as you see fit, and also private access. If you need private access to internal apps, great. We've got that connector to put inside your environment. We have some really great joint customers as well. I mean, we've got some extremely large institutions running this combination of an end user compute stack. So Stratodesk plus Island, and that's it. No Windows, no Citrix, no thick client, E5, E3, thick clients. We can do a lot of this with F3. If you're a Microsoft licensed person, you know what that means. The apps look great. So anyway, that's what we've built. I wanted to keep this a little bit short. Just a quick note about our company. We've spent almost $500 million to create this. We've taken a lot of funding, as you guys can see. We've got over 350 customers. We have 20 of the Fortune 100 as customers. And this is only after 2.5 years of selling. So we built this 4 years ago, came to market 2.5 years ago. And today we're in, I think, 8 of the 9 largest banks in the United States. The largest hotel chain in the world, that's hundreds of thousands of endpoints, the largest airline in the world, largest BPO outsourcer, call center in the world and so forth. I'm gonna skip that slide from Gartner, but this is not just about cybersecurity. It's also about a great end user experience. So when you take this technology to your CIO, that's what they care about. You take this to your CISO, he loves it right away. He gets it. He's like, yes, this is exactly where we've always needed security, was at the endpoint, right? We try to surround it at the OS layer and then try to, plug every single hole from the browser. We just can't do it. Things still slip through. Phishing attacks still slip through email. And by the way, those don't happen in an email. They happen in a browser. So you just need a better browser for that when you start entering those corporate credentials. But the end users love it, right? They're able to, get logged in, get access to, every resource they need, whether it's a thick app, whether it's a web-based app, a progressive web app, everything just comes to life. And then that's it. They're done. They do their work and they leave. The business loves it because now you can talk to your GRC team, the risk compliance teams. You get full auditability, screenshots, mouse clicks. Everything is categorized, monitored, and you can set a corporate policy for things even like BYO. If you did want to extend this to mobile devices or to, untrusted devices, maybe home devices running Mac or Windows or something else, it's the same experience for those other devices. So when you get into a carpeted space or even, a remote space with Stratodesk running on it, it's going to be the same experience when they go home and boot up their computer with that as well. So we've built so much into Island. As you can see, there's a lot of functionality. We do support full ZTNA network that we've built out. We do support things like step-up authentication. So, today you might have application owners that are like, hey, I'd love for, step 5 of 6 of this very critical process in this application to have an MFA. But that means we'd have to recode it. We'd have to go talk to the developers. We'd have to integrate that with whatever SSO that we have. Or we just have the browser do it. And that's something that we can do because we control that entire presentation layer at the front end. And again, we run, on just about any platform. Obviously, Stratodesk is one of them. And we can also check device posture. If we don't like the look of the device, maybe something in process isn't running that we want, or one of these other things, we can check for those in real time and make a decision on whether or not we even allow that access. We have DLP engines built into the browser. We have a full digital experience management. So you might have another solution for that, Datadog, AppDynamics, New Relic, Dynatrace, right? Well, why? You're just trying to understand the experience from the user in the browser. Well, guess what? An enterprise browser gives you that. We know exactly Sally's experience from Cleveland on Salesforce, for every single click. We can give you that. So, that CIO is going to get a lot of tool consolidation out of this. They're going to get this amazing user experience. The executives are going to love it because they're going to get, an app on the phone to access a lot of those apps, right, as well as the carpeted spaces with Stratodesk and so forth. So just a quick, use case slide. This is the last one, and I want to get to a demo, and I'm going to turn back over to Rich here in a second. So critical SaaS apps, web apps, internal web apps, right? Think about your contractors. How do you support these guys today? Well, you could have them boot up on Stratodesk and have Island immediately there. Or, you can have them download and run it on their Mac or their Windows or whatever. BYO, right? Reduce VDI. That's a huge one. I get this request all the time. Folks are just done with Citrix. They want to be done with it. They don't like the new contract negotiations and the price increases and so forth. So this really does represent, a path out of that. And think about it. If you were to create a path out of that, you would do it in the browser, and we've done that. So, and then this may not be everything. We may not be able to get 100% of the users off. I get that. This may just be a reduction effort. But even an 80% reduction of your Citrix environment, the storage, the compute, the net scalers, all that other stuff starts to decrease. The license cost decreases, the hardware, the environmental impact, all of that stuff we start to slowly take out of that environment. And even for the thick apps, we can stream those. We can still stream them, but we don't stream them through a Citrix workspace client. We stream them through the browser. So why would you do that? Why would you not use a Citrix workspace client? Well, the browser, turns out, we can do watermarking in there. We can do full session recording in there. We understand the clicks. We can secure the environment of that access to that resource and just have it all in a single interface. We don't need another Citrix client. We don't need that token leaving a browser and getting down into the Citrix workspace client where you then log in. Nothing leaves the browser. We don't need that. And of course, a few other use cases, OpenAI, ChatGPT, all of these large language models today, you guys are probably struggling with how to deal with it. Usually people just say no. We're not going to be able to say no forever. But the one thing they all have in common is a browser. So if you're able to control the data leaving the browser and the data coming back in, if it's going to an OpenAI site, that's the golden ticket to turning it on, which if we detect sensitive data, if we detect certain types of data, maybe secret formulas or something that you're sending out to the large language model, the browser stops you in your tracks before it ever leaves the network. So there's a lot of really cool capabilities and some brand new ones that you've never really thought of because we have that front end last mile control. So I'll pause there. I can't wait to show you some things. I think Rich is going to kick us off with his portion of a demo, and then I've got one as well to show you a bit of Island. And we'll take Q&A as well after that.
Yeah, and Jason, thank you. And hopefully my screen share is coming across correctly here. And, it's amazing. Again, you think about the level of control and the ability that you have to be able to do this. Then the next question is, well, how difficult is it for me to deploy this? What if I got to get this out to my users and those kinds of things? And one of the things I want to address, and I'll address that during this quick demo that I'm going to do, is to your point is, the last thing you want is to show up Monday morning and have your applications not working and going, okay, what did Google change over the weekend? And I think that's one of the key things in the partnership between Stratodesk and Island is the fact that we give the admins the ability to have version control over what's being changed within the island and those kinds of things. So just to, and the Stratodesk part of this is quite simple, honestly. For those of you that are familiar with Stratodesk, basically what we're doing is we're going to deploy Island as an extension. So what that means is, from a Stratodesk perspective, the system administrators would log into their Island console. They would get the island.deb file, go to resources, miscellaneous files, and upload the island.deb. That makes it available to No Touch Center. Then you simply go in, you create your group, you create your settings, your extensions, those kinds of things, and you say that you're going to have an extension. You simply choose the Island extension, and this was what gives you the ability to choose which version of the island.deb you want to deploy. Do you want to deploy Island version 1 or Island version 1.3? You get to make that decision, not somebody else doing that for
Hey,
you.
Rich. Hey, Rich, a quick note here. The word extension in the browser world means something totally different. I want to point that out. We're not talking
Yes.
about, this is not a browser extension. This is the Stratodesk installation method, right?
Yeah, and you're right, Jason. I mean, I've actually had people that get a little bit confused about that. And so again, from a Stratodesk perspective, this is a Stratodesk extension, not a browser extension. You would add those to the island, so yeah, we may have to look at that. But anyways, but yeah, that's the key. So again, you upload the .deb file, right? You select the Stratodesk extension that you're going to use. And then just like anything else within Stratodesk, you choose the connection that you want to choose. So you go ahead and choose your island connection. And then literally it's that simple to create the connection and setup. And then you simply drag and drop your devices into the correct folder or assign it to the correct group. And the island extension, or the island browser, I should say, is going to be installed in that device. I mean, you see here that's got Chromium and RDP. And if I wanted to allow, I could wait for this thing to reboot. But I mean, again, the device would reboot. It's got the policy, and next thing you know, the island browser is going to be installed, and this machine is going to be ready and have Island running, ready to go. And so the next thing would be for the island administrator to say, okay, now I'm going to set up the policy. Now you've got Island deployed. The user is going to be able to launch the island, whether, like Jason mentioned, do you put it in kiosk mode? So it's the only thing that the users see is that they're logged in for Island, and then you get to run everything else from the Island side of it. So with that, Jason, I'm going to, hopefully I'll get it right this time, flip it right back over to you, and you'll be able to show the Island side of this. But again, the key is how easy this is to get this deployed out there. So
Great. All right, let's do a live demo. It's going to be fun, and hopefully we'll end on this one. By the way, this should take about 5-10 minutes max, and then we'll take some Q&A. So I'll share with you. We also have a management console as well. This is where everything gets set up and integrated. This is a cloud-based management console. However, everything runs locally. This is not an always-on connection. So if I go over to a Stratodesk machine here running, this is completely, disconnected and running locally on the Stratodesk device. So that means you can start to, sweat those assets a little longer, right? If you've got an 8 gigabyte, I don't know, i5 or, whatever kind of processor, great. That's enough to run a browser locally. And that's what we've got here. We've got Island installed locally. And as a user, all you do is get authenticated, and you're going to get authenticated through your identity provider. So one of the first things we'll do is we'll link this up to, your Azure AD. We'll link it up to your Okta. I'm going to do it on my phone here, 29 yes, Face ID. I get logged in, and now I'll be put inside of the secure workspace. Now, this is just an example of what Island can do. You'll have, your branding, you'll have your background, your colors. You've got control of every aspect, of this experience. And the network is built in. So for instance, if I need to get to the intranet, great, I can get there because the browser is able to route me through either that global network or that private access network that I want to get to. And you might go, I've got a Splunk server deep in the Dallas lab. Well, again, and remember, this device can just have internet access. So Stratodesk might just be connected to the internet and that's it. And that is a really cool thing. You don't need VPNs. You don't need the SASE client. You don't need other things on this OS to get you connected into, in this case, my internal Splunk server at the office. Okay. So I wanted to show you that, and then I wanted to also bring you back over here to just the basic productivity suite, right? If you're an Office productivity suite user, I'm going to launch a couple of things that you probably use every day. Teams and Outlook, but notice that these are coming up as progressive web apps. All right, but they're coming up in a dedicated window. So just as you would, deep inside of a VDI, you might have the thick client versions of these running, but now you've got these really nice progressive web apps. But these have policy around them. So it's going to look and feel, exactly the same as the thick app. Because why? Well, because the thick apps are built on these. They're built here first. That's why they do look the same. Okay. And, for the most part, they have similar functionality. There's a little bit of difference, like in Excel and some of the others. You don't have the thick client plugins. And for those power users that need those, they may need to stay inside of VDI. But you might have large swaths of populations that can use this, straight away, because this experience is fine. This is a good experience for them. All their calendars, their email. Oh, sure, let's do that. I don't know what I'm doing there. Let's do this. And then, of course, all of their entitlements show up on this screen as well. Now, some of their entitlements might be, hey, they need to get into super secure workspaces, right? Like RDP sessions. Maybe it's a domain controller or something deep in the environment. Well, great. We don't need another RDP client running on this device to get you there. We'll just do it right here inside the browser. So that's what you're seeing here, is that I've got a private network connection. It auto-inserted credentials for me, so we didn't need to open up Delinea or CyberArk and check them out, and then those leave the browser, and then they become insecure, and then you have to rotate the credentials, and then you have to get to a CyberArk viewer and all this other thing. It's another app to install. We don't need any of that. It's just built in. And so, here I am in this Windows server, deep inside of the Dallas data center, behind firewalls and everything else. Now, this also represents a good interim step for what you can do, because the browser, notice the watermarking that's going across it. If I were to take a picture of something sensitive here, I'm not going to want to do that if my name's all over it. This is the logged in user of the browser, right? So remember, the browser now knows who you are and knows what you have access to. And for things like shared passwords, like the Splunk, I can attribute even a service account to an actual user. So let's say I get logged into Splunk. Again, this is on the internal network. And if I were to take this URL, by the way, and go back to my Mac operating system or even a Chromium browser within Stratodesk, it's not going to reach it. I can't get there, which also means you can use things like conditional access to disallow any other browser from getting to Outlook or Teams. Like, that's a true closed loop system. They're not going to be able to get in without having, watermarks and maybe download rules and those types of things. So, for instance, if I did try to download something, I don't want it to go to the Stratodesk OS. This is a read-only OS. I want to force it to go to maybe the company OneDrive or somewhere else. So notice here, this download is in progress and it's saving it to the OneDrive. All right. So now this is actually this is going to show up in OneDrive. And it forced it to save there. So you can start to set those rules and policies around the applications. Just a couple other things real quick around things like privileged access. So let's say you are, the AWS administrator, or, the Azure, or, GCP or Oracle Cloud, or one of these others, and you go to do something like drop 20 virtual machines, right? You might have complete privileges, root user access to do all that, but your administrators can kind of do that on accident. Maybe it's just a click the wrong button or whatever. Well, we can actually get in the way of those processes by putting extra steps. So notice this button here. Splunk doesn't have this button. Island put this button here because I want to force somebody to two-factor before they can reveal that particular part of the application. So I can do my code here, 962.635, and of course, this would also work, with things like biometrics. But that enabled me to open up this whole section of HTML that I had no other access to. I'm not allowed to view source, inspect element. This is a lockdown browser. Even saving the page or printing, those might be things you want to restrict. You may want to have some control over that. But then finally, I want to show you about the data as well. Oh, by the way, SSH. We have a full SSH client in here too, where, I guess this is no longer connecting. Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah, let's do yes, enter. And now I've got a full SSH client right here inside of the browser. I don't need another application to do that, right? I want to show you just one other thing real quickly, which is the data protection element of it. So if I go to something like Salesforce, Yeah, sure, let's turn that on. I'm going to get logged into Salesforce with a shared account in this case. It's going to auto insert those credentials for me. And this is just a Salesforce on the internet, right? This is plain, I can literally give you this login. You would not be able to log in because you do not have the Island browser. You're not logged in with my tenant of the Island browser. Even if I gave you those credentials, it wouldn't work. But notice there's sensitive data floating around here. I've got a credit card number sitting here in plain text. I've got some other things going on. If I go back to the management console and make a quick change to, let's say, my Salesforce rule, I'm going to look at my Salesforce rule. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on this, some data protection. And notice what it is here. It's got some data protections around financial data. I'm allowing uploads, but maybe the downloads need to go someplace else. But let's go back to Stratodesk and watch this screen. Just keep your eye on that credit card number, because the minute that it gets a new policy, it's going to start reacting differently. And so sure enough, look what it just did. I didn't touch anything. New policy came through. It detected sensitive data in that area and said, nope, you don't get to see that. And that could have been a result of maybe a device posture change. Maybe somebody was coming in through a consumer VPN and we don't want that. We can detect that. If if they turned off their antivirus or whatever on some other type of computer. These are things we can look for from a device perspective and, redact that data, blank it out. And there's no way they can get this. They're not going to be able to do anything, because remember, the moment it was decrypted, we determined to hide it, to not display it to the eyeballs, right? So literally this represents a brand new way to protect the data that you have in your cloud and internal applications. I'll pause here. There's so much more to show. We can stream thick apps as well. If you've got, Azure Virtual Desktop, we actually have a full connector with our Azure, AVD and some of the others. So if I were to sign in here to my Azure Virtual Desktop apps, let's see here, I can get signed in. And notice what happens here on the bottom. Once I get connected, it's going to pull all of those published apps from Azure VD and put them down here right on my homepage. Right. So if I did need, access to a CAD application or something like that, I can open that up. And this is a fully watermark protected environment where, notice, it's got my IP address. It's got a clear directive, do not photograph. And pretty soon this is going to launch, the app that I wanted streamed to me. Right. So you guys have probably seen this if you're Azure Virtual Desktop folks. But anyway, this just represents a new way to get to everything, right? We got our thick apps here. We've got our progressive web apps, obviously, with Teams, with Zoom and Slack and everything else. You're going to have a full workspace environment, that gets you. And the other thing I should mention too, this is an excellent resiliency play. So CrowdStrike happens again. It didn't affect your Stratodesk endpoint, but it affected your target endpoint within the virtual desktops. This is an excellent resiliency plan to get folks back up and working into those target applications without the constraints of maybe a kernel issue or something like that. So anyway, think about it in phases. Think about pulling apps out. There's probably some workforce users that you can bring directly out, make them fully web-based, got the networking taken care of. Also resiliency play, but also if you want to run this browser inside of Windows, inside of your virtual desktop environment, great. It is a better browser. We do things like web categorization and, those types of things. If I want to go to a gambling site, those are things that we can, prohibit and so forth. So let's pause here. Go ahead and stop the demo.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jason, real quick, because there was one question. I think this was a pretty easy one for you to answer.
Sure.
The question is, are you able to copy and paste between the apps?
Well, only if that's allowed. That is completely configurable. In fact, I'll show you an example of that just real quick. If I go back here, back into that Salesforce example, you guys can see this, right? Yeah, if I go back to Salesforce, let's say I did have the right to view this data and I redacted that watermark. If I were to try to copy this out, I can paste it back into this application. I don't want to stop the progress of work, right? However, if I go over to, let's say, my Gmail or something like that and get logged in here, I'm not going to be able to paste it in there. So in fact, if I try to paste it in, notice it says paste is disabled, because this is a different zone. This application is a different zone than the ones we've defined where we can use the clipboard. We also actually give you access to see the clipboard and all the different things that you've cut, copy, pasted over here. But if I were to move over to a different app, notice that it's grayed out. I'm not able to paste that data back into this area. So we've created those zones naturally based on the rules that you set up.
But if you had an allowed zone, you'd be able to paste that data, correct? Well, let's say it was Notepad, just for purpose of explanation, and you wanted to
That's up
allow
to
them
you. Yeah, that's up to you. You
policy.
can. Yeah, that's up to you. Yeah.
Yep. So
Credential theft, if I were to steal the MSPRT. Now, here's what's interesting. Our tokens are encrypted. So this is a great answer. It's a great question from Evan. Because in a consumer grade browser, when you log in, you get authenticated, you get your two-factor, they drop a cookie, and that's your token. And if anybody grabs that token from your C drive, it's history, right? They're basically fully logged in. And so what we've done is we've had to protect. That's the first thing we did with this browser, is protect those session tokens, those cookies, those safe passwords. Those are encrypted in a way that are completely, untamperable, I guess is the way to say it, including other things. We're doing things in Windows with memory tampering. We've obfuscated the memory space. We're doing things with things like keylogger prevention. So absolutely, that was a big part of what we did there. Next question, John. How are collaboration apps, Zooms and Teams? Zoom and Teams. So let's think about it. This has always been the challenge with virtual desktops, right? Because you have virtual desktops somewhere in Virginia. You launch Zoom there. Your camera's here in Dallas. How does this work? What about the audio? Well, guess what? You're local now. You don't need to worry about that. You don't need a helper anymore, a helper to send your audio and video local, but have Zoom actually connect remotely. It doesn't make sense to do that. So you're just going to get a natural experience, because guess what? Chromium was built to handle all of those peripherals, right? And you can have, I'll show you the example here. If I go to Zoom, let's do this live again. Let's go back over here. If I launch Zoom from my homepage, I'm going to get that PWA experience. I think I've got it here somewhere. I guess
while you're digging around,
I guess I took it off.
Accidentally have the multiple mirror situation, so just be careful.
Zoom.us/app/WC, I believe is what it is. No, Zoom.us, WC. Yeah, so this right here, if you look at this, if I were to create an app out of this, all right, and say install, this is what it would look like. You would just get your Zoom app like this. And this, this looks and feels exactly like the Thick Client app. Now, there's a couple of things that are just a little different, like some of the blurring capabilities and those types of things are a little off. But you're going to get that same experience. In fact, I'll just sign in here and show you exactly what it looks like. Let's just see here. Here we go. I'm not going to join a meeting or anything, but you can kind of get a feel for it. So here's the Zoom client, right? Boom, looks just like the other Zoom client you're using, right? But this is now delivered through the browser in this workspace context. Okay. So yeah, Zoom, Teams, all of that. Slack works great. Slack is basically a web app. If you guys didn't know that, I mean, that's definitely built first in Chromium. And again, compiled into Electron for the Thick app. I actually prefer the web app of Slack better. The license. Okay, license is based by user. So that's, one user, one named user, they get as many devices as they want. They want mobile, their tablets. So it's just basically based on user. By the way, if you're a seasonal user, I get this question a lot. If you have seasonal workers that come in and out of, during the year, then we'll be reasonable with you and find something that is a happy medium. What do I recommend to clients for apps that require Windows? Yeah, so that would be the streaming example. So you saw that Azure Virtual Desktop. I can stream individual apps to the browser. Okay, so if you have to have thick apps, if it's some old Delphi, Visual Basic, DOS, terminal emulator, who knows? If it's not RDP, SSH, if it's not a progressive web app, if there's no web version of it, then fine, we'll have to stream it. There's no other way, but we do that in the browser. We don't have another client for that. Good questions.
We do have
else?
one more in the chat.
Yeah, let's take a look here.
Is it possible to publish macOS desktop applications remotely?
Ooh, I don't know. I don't know. What do you think, Rich?
I don't know. So it's good thing about that. So publish Mac OS desktop applications.
That'd be a little risky. I'm sure you could. I bet there's since we support. Well, what does Mac use? It uses like the VNC protocol still, doesn't it? I mean, when Mac does remote desktop sharing, it actually uses the old VNC. If you had a VNC client as an extension inside the browser, maybe you could.
And depending on access and where it's at and what the application is, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and you can virtualize the Mac sessions now. So I mean, potentially, I mean,
Yeah, I know AWS, when I was at AWS, we started using the Mac Minis as a hosted product for EC2. So you could actually, you could spin up a Mac Mini with the ARM processor and do some testing there. What else? Brazil, can't help you there.
well, we can take care of the Brazil part.
Okay, there you go.
So, and so while Jason's reading the question, I just want to go back and reiterate to to make sure everybody understands that, the key to this is the fact that now you have the ability between the two organizations, you have the ability to manage the BIOS, you have the ability to manage the operating system, you have the ability to manage the browser, and because you can manage the browser, you can now manage the applications. And you've seen how simple it is to get Island deployed into the Citrix or Stratodesk environment, and how easy it is once you've got the browser to be able to use the Island management console to change the policy for whatever applications you're using, because it's all within the same engine and the same console. And I think these are the key things, the ability to be able to manage the security aspects of what's going on rather simply. I mean, you have the ability to do SaaS, DaaS, VDI applications. Jason and I can attest that we have customers that are, launching their VDI session with inside of Island. So, I mean, it's just a great solution. And from a CIO, CTO, CISO perspective, I can't think of a more secure option to put at your endpoints.
Yeah, and just to put a cap on it from a product side of it, if I were to share that management console again, I just went over here to our user timeline, and you can see everything that I just did. I went to Zoom, right? I navigated, I clicked, I did some keystrokes. I went to Salesforce, I did some things here. I tried to paste, but I got blocked, right? You're going to understand these user activities at a much more granular level now, all the way down to what did it look like from a user perspective. So even though we just did this a minute ago, I've already got the history of everything that just happened. So notice this is the chronology of the demo that we just did. The little red circle shows where I clicked on the screen, shows a picture of the screen, right? It shows I tried to copy data here. I copied this data. So these are events that you would just never have seen before, because you've never been able to capture a copy event or a paste event, or a print, or trying to save the HTML page or something like that. But now I've got this full, chronology and history of exactly what the user did and the way the application behaved, right here within Island. And of course, we don't need to log everything. And that's the thing about Island, is that we know when to be private. We know when to be, heavily monitored, because you might have regulations that say, I can't monitor that. So, in GDPR areas and California privacy and others, I might need to anonymize everything, right? But otherwise, I might want to capture everything. When did they print? When did they save a page? With the screenshot, with the mouse click. So there's a lot of functionality that's built in here. I didn't get a chance, and I'd love to give you guys an actual full demo of the product itself, but we've got a password manager that's built in, directly to Island. This is a world-class password manager, okay? This is much better than any extension password manager, and it does work very well inside of Stratodesk. We can do SMB file shares. If you guys are concerned about your file shares, deep inside of your environment, those now just come through. We can connect those with that private access agent. That was kind of one of the last things that we always got questions of when we start replacing VDI is, well, what about my file shares? We got it. We've got it covered. We have a full AI assistant built into to the browser, and we can give you terms of service, right? We can, we'll put this here that we link it with Azure, the Azure AI technology. That's something we just built in, but it has data protections around it. So if you start putting in credit card numbers or something sensitive, we're going to stop you from doing that. So anyway, lots to show. I'd love to give you guys a full briefing on Island if that's appropriate as well.
Well, and I was going to say, Jason, there was one more question, and I think it's actually, and I want to give it a 2-answer piece piece, and that is, what's your biggest differentiator between the Edge enterprise browser, Google's version, the Palo Alto Talon, those kinds of things. So I'll let you answer that in a moment, but I'd say one of the biggest differences is, again, the solution of the joint organizations. Because, look, it's great if you put a browser on top of, Stratodesk, you have all those controls. But if you're putting a browser on top of Windows, you're still having to deal with all the Windows issues. And, was the BIOS up to date? What, are those CVEs out there for keyloggers, those kinds of things? And obviously you can control it from an island perspective, but you still have the risk of the Windows. So again, putting Stratodesk and Island together, then it's going to give you all those benefits. And then, Jason, if you wanted to address the benefits from
Yeah.
my perspective.
Yeah, so somebody was asking about how current is the update policy and those types of things. So our code base, since it's based on Chromium, we are always on the latest stable release of Chromium. We have 2-week sprints. Chrome has 4-week sprints, which is, they're going to be up to date with the latest stable release from Chromium. So are we. In our hot fixes, if there's a hot fix that needs to happen, we have a 48-hour turnaround on the hot fixes. So sometimes we actually get them out faster than Chrome and Edge, just because of our, sometimes it works out that the cycle ends that way. So in some cases, we're actually faster. As far as your rollouts, though, you control your rollouts. So you don't have a CrowdStrike situation. You could have, a rollout of a certain group of users that maybe you want to, delay the update, right? You might have a group of users or, a certain department that may get the browser updates first. You may pin certain users to certain versions, just not to, maybe it's a lockdown environment. You can roll back to certain versions, right? You can have a forced relaunch within a certain time period where they're compelled to relaunch it. So everything is literally controlled here, within the policy that's set within the management console. Okay. Now, some of this too will be handled by Stratodesk, right? So because now you have a fully managed OS, super easy to do rollout schedules and those types of things with the browser that way. In fact, that may be the way you do it with Stratodesk, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, because again, you can control the versioning, right, from the
Yeah.
Stratodesk extension. So it
Yeah.
gives you the ability.
As far as Chrome Enterprise and Edge for business, they're trying. I mean, obviously they've got some functionality there. It's definitely some of it's coming along. We're just 4 years ahead of anything that's out there. You never get. By the way, those vendors are never going to touch the presentation layer. That's not what they do. They don't want to alter a web experience or get in the way of a process. Like those administrative, like dropping 20 virtual machines, that's not going to be any part of their business. Their business, and we don't step on their business is ad revenue. Like that's the big kahuna for them. They just happen to do it through a browser. And they'd have to create another browser with a different code base, and they're not going to do that. They're not going to suddenly harden cookies or suddenly encrypt, locally saved passwords. They're not going to, mess with the memory space or keylogger protection. They're not going to put any of that stuff in a consumer-grade product and then try to maintain a separate code base for an enterprise grade version of it. It's just, they've had plenty of years to do it. And if they wanted to do it, of course they could, but they'd have to hire 350 people. And that's a larger development group than any other product at Microsoft. So anyway, that's my personal opinion. It's not don't take that to the bank.
So, and there's a question about, can you automatically update the Island browser? Does it have to be done from Stratodesk? And actually that's a little bit of a mixed question, and the answer to that is it depends on where you point the Stratodesk island.deb extension URL to. So if you're an IT director and you have a group of users that you want to have, to Jason's point, have a fixed version of Island, you can use the No Touch Center URL for a specific version of that island.deb. But if you want to have a group, let's say a development group that you want to have using the latest version, you can point to any public repository or any URL where that latest island.deb is. So you can have it set at a fixed version, you can have it at the latest version, and you can have it on multiple versions across your organization if that's what you want. It's all dependent on the URL that you point the extension to.
Great. All right. Well, thanks everybody. I guess we could probably wrap it. What do you say, Rich?
Yeah, I think. I mean, there's a bunch more questions. And by the way,
incognito mode. Let me hit this one real quick. Incognito, of course, yes, we support full incognito mode. In fact, you can even log into Island with multiple profiles if you wanted to log in with multiple users. Those are completely separate spaces. None of those profiles would ever touch each other. Completely secure from one another.
Yeah,
I think that's it.
So, and again, I don't want to beat the horse to death, but I am. I mean, again, from a corporate device security perspective, I see this as the direction for every organization. I don't know why you wouldn't. So Jason, thank you very much. I think this is very informative for everybody, and I appreciate your time and joining us to do this. So
Of course. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you so much, Jason and Rich. We did record today's session. We'll make sure that you all get a recording, as well as any links around, free trials or where you could learn more about Island. We'll make sure all of that is in the follow-up email. So thank you so much for joining us today.
everybody, thanks everybody. Have a great
Thank you.
day.
Thank
Bye.
you.